Let's move on to our next panel discussion with another set of experts that will be talking to us today about an important topic that is close to our hearts.
Yeah, actually, this is one of the panels I'm most looking forward to. It's about technology and public debate. And I think for journalists like me and Atom especially, because we're so exposed and on the front lines when we're covering, we get Twitter messages and Facebook messages that are not always very nice. Obviously, especially now that the debate has, there's been some sentiments of negativity as well online. This panel is especially interesting, and I'm sure that a lot of us can relate to this one.
That's right. Actually, everyone can relate. Kasi hindi lang mga journalists when you express your views online sometimes, and well, oftentimes it can get quite nasty. So we want to navigate this new field and see what we can do as netizens, as all social media consumers. And let's welcome our panelists and introduce them one by one. The first is the chair of the board of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility. Let's give it up for Mr. Virgel Santos.
The second is a colleague, Pia Ranada, a multimedia reporter at Rappler who has covered President Rodrigo Duterte from the campaign and until now in his presidency.
Our next panelist, the founder of Thinking Machines. A round of applause for Stephanie C.
And finally, we have Vince Lazetin, who is the Executive Director of Transparency and Accountability Network.
And of course, once again, moderating our panel is Maria Ressa, the CEO and Executive Editor of Rappler. Maria.
Thanks, guys. We're going to ask you questions too. So I'm going to give you time to make sure you ask questions. I just want to introduce each of them and ask them to tell you how technology has impacted the public debate. How has it impacted what people believe? Stephanie has a long, very young, but she's worked with Google. You've worked with technology. And from what you see, Thinking Machines is a group that looks at data, scours the data to look for meaning for us. And one of the things I remember is the Kathniel and the Duterte campaign during that time period. So please tell us first, and then go into this one. What's the impact of technology on public discourse?
Sure. Hi. So thank you for having me on this panel. My background is really in startups and technology and data science. Thank you. All right. So from the technology perspective, the internet, when it first was built, the vision for the internet is to connect people and build communities all around the world. But I think when it comes to the public debate, there's two specific trends in technology I've been noticing over the last 3 years that have serious social impacts. First is targeting and clustering have really improved over the last 3 years, really creating this phenomenon where you see more of what you want to see. And tech companies, people like me, have been getting better and better at developing algorithms to isolate you into behavioral groups and to just show you an echo chamber. So if you are, if you belong to a certain demographic, if you're interested in certain things, I don't know if most of you are aware, but the Facebook newsfeed itself is algorithmic in nature. You're not seeing everything. You're seeing what Facebook thinks you're most likely to interact with. And if you interact with something, you'll see more and more and more of that. And that naturally pushes people into social bubbles that don't talk to each other and engage with each other. The second thing I'm seeing in technology that has social impacts on public debate is the ease of creation of bots and bot networks. So that's something that's huge. The technology for building bots has been around for 5 or so years, but it's only been in the last year or two that I've really seen them become a very vocal, very vocal minority of comments in the public sector. My knowledge of this in the Philippines comes from a post that my team did. So we studied Twitter data during the elections, and we wanted to see just the nature of the conversations people were having about our presidential candidates. We did a fun little post about what emojis people associated with what candidates, and we looked at whether or not bots were being used in the conversation. Funnily enough, Kath Neal, there was an ABS, ABS Bato? Yeah,
Yes,
an
yeah.
ABS contest.
Yes.
And one of the rules was, whoever gets the most retweets with this hashtag or whoever gets the most mentions wins this contest. And nakita namin, most of the volume was coming from a bot, and somehow this bot had latched onto a tweet that was mentioning both Duterte, who was a candidate at the time, and Kath Neal. So, as in, super inflate for that couple of days the mentions of Duterte, who has a very strong online following, but it's just that in this one instance, it wasn't him. And this points to a larger problem I see of picking the wrong metrics. If your metric of choice for who's the most popular is who has the most mentions, then you're going to incentivize people to build a lot of bots and bot networks to push that out. So I'm really hoping to see more real engaged conversations between citizens around the world, which is the original vision and goal of the internet, rather than artificial inflation that is now possible with tech.
How can you tell when it's a bot?
Oh, that's really interesting field. How can you tell when it's a bot now? It's actually like a real war between two different types of technologists. So every time someone builds better bot detection, someone else builds a better bot. So far, what seems to work is studying the patterns of when bots are posting. So this is very basic lang. If someone has no followers, if someone is not talking in a human register about things that are outside of if someone's just talking about one topic, has no friends, no followers, only talks about one topic and posts about it every 2 milliseconds, that's definitely a bot. But now that companies are aware of this, Facebook, Twitter, Google, like everyone's very aware that that's a type of bot. Bot makers are getting more sophisticated about mimicking human patterns and human interactions. But I think the piece that they will never be able to mimic is that bots are not connected to real human beings, whereas real human beings are connected to other real human beings. And that's what I think the most effective filter really is.
Fantastic. Stephanie is back in the Philippines now, right? You're home.
Yeah, I'm committed to the Philippines.
Great. So, Stephanie, you talked about echo chambers. From the man who's seen history in this country, from Verhel, the impact of these echo chambers, I mean, from what you've seen, governments around the world, we're actually seeing this movement towards more charismatic, strongman type leaders in Modi in India, Duterte in the Philippines, right? Many more, Venezuela, blah, 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 all of these. Please tell us, what is the impact of technology from your eyes?
Well, it seems to me I'm the only pre-digital specimen apart from my wife around here. I've been in the business for more than 50 years. Well, because I was a child prodigy. I started at 8. In any case, I'm not one to deny technology. In fact, I like technology. I surrender to technology. But I also understand that technology is as much a tool, a toy, and a weapon. And it seems to me that it is today being used more as a brutal, vulgar, indiscriminate weapon than any other such weapon has been used before, communication weapon. So what do we have today? It seems to me, by the surveys that I have done, given my residual energy, It seems to me the people are more confused than enlightened these days. And I'm sorry to say, but I can only blame technology because technology is open to everyone. Technology chooses no one. And one thing about technology is that technology has no morals. Technology has no morals. Technology has no values. Technology is too neutral for us to be relying on it alone. So what we have today, you see strong men about the world. And I remember a visiting professor from the London School of Economics saying, of all people, an academic saying, well, the virus is in the air, the virus is in the water. How can we accept that kind of explanation at all? And I think the explanation is unclear or absent at all because people today are still trying to find out ways of somehow assigning morals to technology. Now, I don't know how we'll be able to do it, but I certainly want to see some sense of it.
Well, that's a great insight because something like Facebook, for example, right? Mark Zuckerberg refuses to make a choice between fact and fiction, right? They're both treated equally in a platform like Facebook. Vince, transparency. I love what Verhel said. Your thoughts on this, and for a man who spent his career fighting for transparency, do we have greater transparency with technology?
I think technology is at least a two-edged sword. It has provided, I think, a lot of transparency. It provides a venue and a channel for greater transparency in many different areas, especially in the public arena in terms of public governance. But with that comes the flip side, and that is a lot of the disinformation that is coming out. You spoke earlier in your talk about artificial intelligence and how artificial intelligence is the here and now. But what we're seeing on the internet is a different kind of AI, which is artificial ignorance.
Artificial ignorance.
Yes, I think
interesting.
if we listen to what Stephanie talked about the bots and algorithms and the paid trolls, they are purveyors of artificial ignorance. And I think this is what we're seeing a lot of on the internet, especially on social media. And because of that, it has swayed public opinion towards different things. And what I've noticed when we talk about public debate, on the internet, it's not so much public debate anymore as it is screaming matches. Whoever screams the loudest gets the most attention and influences thinkings and minds. And I think this is the sad thing about the internet and social media today. For Verhel, myself, and perhaps you
Yes.
maybe Stephanie and P are too young, who were there before the onset of the internet in 1994, 1995. The internet, or at least the precursor of the internet, was about chat rooms where people shared information.
Yes.
In fact, it was really sharing of information among scientists, among academics. That was the precursor of the internet.
Yes.
And it was a very collegial and congenial atmosphere, as I remember it back in the day. And that had been the case until recent times. And as you pointed out, it was specifically brought in sharp relief during these past elections, where the amount of hatred and vitriol on the internet is just intolerable, I think. And it has silenced people into submission. The trolls have found a way to weaponize the internet. And that is what has happened. In fact, one of the most visible public figures today is probably the world's biggest troll. And I don't know who you might want to guess who that is. I'll give you a hint. His name begins with D. Donald Trump.
Okay.
Just in case you're thinking. But people like Donald Trump sort of, I think, are the world's biggest trolls because they put forth half-truths, sometimes outright lies.
Yes.
And people eat that up. And then, as you said, this thing ripples throughout the internet galaxy at exponential rates. And what was started out as a lie or a half-truth becomes a truth by the time it reaches the general public. And I think this is the danger we see about technology and public debate. And I think the level of public debate, because the internet has been weaponized, has really sunk. And I'm really sad to see this.
Thank you. I mean, there's so many things to pick apart, and please, you feel free to jump in, including Atom and Natasha. But before we do that, I want to go to Pia. And you may be wondering, she looks really young, but this woman is not only climbing mountains, literally, but she was also at ground zero. If you remember the time when President Duterte held his last press conference before he moved to Malacanang. And Pia Renada was the reporter who asked him about the wolf whistle, right? And I'm starting with that because that question, which is a normal question a journalist would ask, unleashed a flood on Facebook, on the internet. I guess, Pia, can you tell us about what happened, how you reacted to it?
So I'm not sure if people watched the incident, but basically President Duterte wolf whistled at a reporter, Maurice Umali, a GMA reporter, and I wanted to ask him if he knew that wolf whistling, according to the Women's Code of Davao City, of which he is mayor, of which he used to be mayor, for that code, wolf whistling is actually illegal, and there are penalties if you whistle at a woman. And so I just wanted to ask him, sir, do you know that the women's code you signed actually says that what you just did is illegal? And so his reaction was to whistle at me. So, obviously it was a very awkward situation. But I still pressed forward. I still tried to get an answer from him until he said, I don't like that question, let's move on. So okay, fine. So I asked my second question. But then after that, he still brought up the fact that, like he was saying, it's not malicious or it's not sexual in nature, and women shouldn't get offended if a man whistles at them. At which point, I told him that his definition of what offends women is not up to him, right? Because what offends each one of us is subjective. Like sometimes. How is he, a man, supposed to know what offends a woman? And I'm a woman, and so I would know. I think I would be in a better position to know what offends a woman. So I told that to him, and then he just, I don't know, I don't remember how he reacted, but I think at that point, I decided to ask my second question. And so end of story. After that, though, people were really harassing me online for what I did. They were saying how disrespectful I was to the president-elect. They were saying how biased I was and how, I should be more respectful when I asked the incoming president. And parang, hindi ba na-compliment si Maurice Umali na the president-elect whistled at her and so found her attractive, so on and so forth. So, and it was also disconcerting because, they would go into my Facebook account and message me direct message, a lot of threats. Like, I would get rape threats, death threats. Even on Rappler's Facebook, every time I post a story or they post a story for me, may RIP, Pia Renada, gano'n. So at some point, it became very tiring and very emotionally distressing, diba? How do you keep writing about Duterte when everything you write, people send you hate messages for it? How can you be objective in a world where being objective means you are hated for your job? So I think that's the biggest challenge right now for journalists. I'm sure if you notice online, you see a lot of people, maybe your friends even, or someone you don't know, Duterte, quote unquote, telling you to unfollow ABS-CBN, Inquirer, Rappler because they're supposedly biased. So it's scary, right? I mean, journalism as we know it is under threat from people who think objectivity has no more value. So it's a challenge for everyone. It's a challenge not only for journalists, but also for netizens to be able to discern who to believe in. Because if you know, for example, Thinking Pinoy, I'm not sure if you know the blog, Thinking Pinoy is a rabidly pro-Duterte blog, and they say that they tell people to abandon the news sites and to just depend on blogs like them for news. So it's like the world has been turned upside down. You're meant to believe that the true, accurate, and believable, credible sources are the pro-Duterte blogs. Never mind the fact that they're more biased. They're probably the most biased source of information. And you're meant to believe that journalists who put their names on the line, who actually publish their names, you know our identities, you can research our Facebook accounts, you know who we are. We're the ones who are not to be believed, who are not responsible, or who aren't accountable for what we write. So it's a very scary time for journalists, to be honest. For example, in Malacanang, I'm now a Malacanang beat reporter, and we have these press conferences every Tuesday, and these are streamed live on Facebook. And if you read the comments, people watching, every time we ask a question, that's kind of critical, kind of negative, they keep commenting, walang kwentang reporter, ano ba yung tanong na yan? Mamatay ka na. It's like that. So, it's really tough. I think the challenge now is for journalists to prove that despite the fact that what we say may not please you, it's something you need to listen to, or there's still value in the truth, and there's still value in being objective. Yeah.
Verhel, I want to ask you to, just this week, NUJP and IFJ, in the International Federation of Journalists, released a statement talking about two women journalists, Jam Alandogan from Al Jazeera and Gretchen Malalat, who was working with Time Magazine, that similar complaints that they were being threatened with murder, with rape, all these other things. What do you do in a world like today?
It is true. We have been forced to live inverted lives because universal norms of behavior and propriety and civility and such things have been turned upside down. And our problem is we have a strong man in the presidency who has decided to redefine the norms. So how do we deal with this? If you ask me, I don't care about them. I know what my job is, and by God, I'm going to do it the way I have known that job to be done. Now, I can understand that in the face of attacks from trolls, one could become intimidated. Well, one becomes intimidated up to a point. What I cannot quite understand is certain journalists being charmed and disarmed even instead of intimidated. This by itself shows you the run of ethics and morals in the profession. Me, if you ask me about those trolls, I don't care about them. But I may be defining the rules for myself in that way. I still think that journalists who think themselves worth their profession should come together and look at this as a professional problem.
Yes.
As an even moral problem, as something that does not help the profession at all or the society. I mean, this is something that goes beyond the natural sense of competition that journalists have among journalists exercise among each other. This is something else. And this is what I mean by trying somehow to put some sense, just sense, some reason, some norms of proper behavior in the use of technology.
It's really hard to do that, and that's part. So Stephanie, go ahead and before you pick up from Verhel is sometimes when we look at a Facebook post that is perceived as anti-Duterte, and President Duterte, to his credit, actually just 2 days ago, asked his supporters to stop attacking journalists for their jobs. But what we've seen in these Facebook posts is that if it's perceived as negative, within seconds, it is automatically attacked. So Is that a bot? Is there anything that can be done? What about influencing public opinion? I mean,
If its response is within milliseconds, it's probably a bot. Human can't read that fast. But I think it also speaks to the point of technology having no morals. I'd like to add a little bit to that because technology, they're systems. Facebook is a system, Twitter is a system, and systems incentivize, express moral and ethical behavior through what they incentivize and what behavior they disincentivize.
interesting.
And because Facebook Twitter very, very vibrantly, specifically says that it is a platform for everyone to say everything, philosophically, they believe in as pure freedom of speech as possible, even if people are insulting each other. So the way Twitter is built is optimized for saying whatever you want to whoever you want and having it right in your face. Whereas there are other social networks that have some simple things built in. For example, in Instagram, there is a setting where you can say if this particular word appears in some comment, it'll automatically not be seen on your post. So if someone's kung may nagmumura sa'yo, pwede mong i-filter out yung mga comments na yan. And that's a product decision that Instagram's made that has like real moral and ethical outcomes. So I think that us in tech, we also have a responsibility to be part of this discussion and to build systems that incentivize ethics. But then we have to decide what we need those to be. And that's not something that a really good engineer or a really good computer could ever figure out.
This actually, I think, is the place where you can see everything changing, right? It is shifting dramatically. And Vince, your reaction to what Pia said, and then the morals. I like the lack of morals, and then in terms of Stephanie's statement.
I don't know if any of you caught the op-ed piece in Wired magazine called "Dear Internet."
Yes.
I thought that was a very good piece addressing a lot of these issues, especially the leading social media players such as Twitter and Facebook and Instagram. It was basically saying that it's time that these companies start taking a little more responsibility for the kind of environment that we are now living in on the internet and social media. And it has really been an environment, I think most of us have seen it at one point or another, and the journalists have seen it up front and personal. The kind of hatred that is really being fostered by social media today. And it does have, and Maria, Verhel, and I were in a conference not too long ago where we were talking about the chilling effect that has, especially on journalism and media in this country. And as much as journalists are generally intrepid people, in the face of all this, it sometimes gets to you when the volume is high, and the quantity is high, of course, as well. And so I think this is something that the social media companies really have to think about. And Verhel's idea about a moral grading system, I think that's interesting as well, because it's about time that we're all believers in free speech, right?
Yes.
And we all believe the power of free speech. But to be corny, with great power comes great responsibility. And every freedom has a limit, whether it's freedom of speech, whether it's freedom of expression, whether it's freedom, whatever freedoms we have, all of those actually do have limits. So just because we have freedom of speech doesn't mean we can issue threats to everyone or to anyone. And the other thing about social media is a lot of people hide behind anonymity. And Pia pointed this out. Herself, myself, people like us, we're out there. People know who we are when we tweet or our Facebook accounts. And the guys who are attacking you are usually cowardly enough to hide behind anonymity. And I had this Twitter conversation with this fellow, and he said, "Well, why don't you challenge me on my blog?" And I was thinking to myself, well, your blog is anonymous. And if I'm out there in your blog fighting your supporters, I'm out there. But if you fight my supporters, nobody knows who you are. So I don't engage with people who are anonymous on the internet because it's an unfair game, right? So these are some things you have to consider.
Fantastic. We're getting questions from social media. I want to go here first. I guess one is, before we go to the audiences, there is the positive aspect of it, right? Which is the greater empowerment for people and the fact that people once marginalized are no longer marginalized. And that is very real, right? I think that's who President Duterte appealed to in many instances. And then the second problem that we've identified is that in many instances, there are vested interests that continue to take advantage of this. Is that a correct statement? Or not so much? Yes. So it's who builds the bots, right? That's one, and then who foments it. Let me pick up a question from the audience. If you have, raise your hand if you've got a question for the panel. What we saw in these elections for sure is a wide open, ripping open Pandora's box and unleashing anger. Some of the anger is justified for people who are marginalized, and some of the anger is manufactured. Okay, hand up. We've got, please stand up and tell us your name, and then we'll take, thank you. Continue, the people who are still sending questions on Twitter, please go ahead. And right there behind you, Marga, right behind you, over there. Oh. Please tell us your name.
Good afternoon. I'm Gil Santos. I have had some years of journalism behind me. I now teach journalism and diplomatic relations as well. I'm a little bit ahead of and older than Verhel, so I think I can say this. My question is, because technology, even before chemistry, the Industrial Revolution, the flood, Wright brothers and everything else, and the nuclear power came up, it has always been amoral. Technology has always been amoral. But it has been a very useful tool for information dissemination. Because of the demand of the times now, shouldn't there be an equivalent ardor and perseverance to increase the human resource development so that your quality of journalists do not fall behind the advance of technology? It's simply answerable by yes or no. Thank you.
Pick it up for Verhel.
This is a problem, again.
Yes or no doubt?
No, it cannot be answered by yes or no, and Gail knows that. It is not something that could be oversimplified in that way. When you talk about skills, suitability, proficiency of journalists, you are talking about the profession. This is not about the profession alone. Right. This is about technology. Now, whether technology has always been amoral is another point that will have to be taken up. Why? The gun is a technology in its own way. Nuclear weapons are technology. Right. Everything is technology. Now, do we concede such amorality to all these technologies just because they happen to be technologies? This is my point. I mean, hell, I'd like to think that we have been given the capacity for reason that we are supposed to deal with this technology ourselves. Now, what do we do? I mean, this is what we should talk about. What we should do with guns, what we should do with nuclear power, what we should do with every piece of technology, we should do with the internet as well.
Interesting. How do technologists look at this?
I mean, we, as a whole, technologists, we really don't want you to legislate us. And I mean, a very serious debate going on, I think we all touched on that, is that within the tech companies, and I'm not the best person to speak about that. Probably we had someone from senior leadership from Facebook or Google speaking about it, but there are conversations about platforms versus media, right? Like,
Right.
what is Facebook? Is Facebook a technology platform? In which case, it is just providing the infrastructure for people to say whatever they want, or are they actually a media entity responsible for what people say? And I really don't think it's as easy as telling Facebook to legislate itself, because for a media platform, you can control what your reporters end up publishing. Whereas if Facebook were to start limiting what people could say on Facebook, it very easily falls into freedom of speech issues, which are already an issue
Correct.
that they deal with from the other side.
Right.
We're here talking about trolls, but it's also the other big problem Facebook's facing is censorship, accusations that they censored a photo of I forget, a historically relevant photograph that failed to meet their standards for
The Vietnam.
Yes,
Yeah. A photo of, yes. So they get hit on both sides.
so they get it on
actually.
both sides.
Yeah.
So you're stuck there.
But the flip side is 2 weeks ago, there was a lie about Hillary Clinton that trended #1 on Facebook for 24 hours, right? It was #1 and was constantly shared.
And that's a failure that's an algorithmic failure.
Correct.
Facebook used to have, this is why I think humans and machines have to work together
Humans
in a
and
full
machines.
system.
Yeah.
A machine alone that is optimizing for people clicking on it. So that's the proxy metric for trending. How many people are interacting with this? But that can easily be fooled by these echo chambers of people seeing a piece of content that's not true, but is viral and has the truthiness to it. And so that ended up trending. And it's really weird to me because Facebook also just fired their trending news team, who was responsible for humanly curating these topics, and who didn't do, and who were accused of being biased towards, I think, the Democratic Party of America. So
Yes.
they lost it
On
both
both
ways.
ways,
They
right?
lost
So
both
they're in a
ways.
tough one.
You know, let us not be misunderstood here. The machine is not at fault.
Yes.
No, the machine is not at fault. This is a battle between the force of reason and the force of pathology.
Explain,
This-
Verhel.
Oh, well, if you look, very much of the force of reason has been taken away by those who have decided on their own, to leave reason alone,
Yes.
and just deal with fellow men in a brutally pathological way. I mean, meaning immoral, or unethical.
But they may not even realize it because of the echo chambers that have formed. I think that's part of the danger in this new day and age. No?
Yeah, but the echo chamber serves precisely serves to promote
Right.
this pathology.
This thing. Vince.
Just a quick reaction to the question, which was about how journalists could up their game in terms of the new technologies that are coming out. I think on the flip side of that is that the consumer of news and information also have to increase their capability to filter out what is true and what is not true. So many people just forward and click stuff without thinking whether or not it's the truth, whether or not it's accurate, and knowing the source of that information. And because of that, lies spread at an exponential rate, as we were saying. So I think this is something that we also have to consider.
Fantastic. Media literacy was one of the things we keep talking about, I think, now more than ever. Pia, a question for you from @Paulamante on Twitter. What are your specific challenges when it comes to covering President Duterte?
He's always late. Like, sometimes we wait 5 hours for him to come at an event. So that's the major challenge, managing your deadlines, your schedule day to day. And also the fact that he's hard to pin down. As a journalist, you ask a politician questions and you expect straight answers because, they're supposed to know inside out the policies, everything. They're supposed to be on top of everything. But Duterte is a very slippery character. Even the way he speaks is very slippery. I'm sure we all know how often he said something only to take it back, right? Or, the curses, sometimes you really have to, you have to interpret for him what he's saying. So that's why sometimes in my articles I say, it appears he was talking about this because he does not finish his sentences. Sometimes he even gets his facts wrong. You know, like he was talking about a different massacre when apparently it was this massacre. His figures are all wrong. You know, it's like that. But at the same time, Duterte, even if he's challenging and frustrating to cover, he's also, let's admit it, he's very exciting to cover. I mean, the stories that come out of his speeches, you know, him threatening to leave the UN, him insulting this world leader and all that. It's very exciting copy. It's very, you know, it's fun to read, honestly, right? I mean, isn't it refreshing to hear about this president like insulting another president? I mean, it's unheard of. So we're all, it's very viral potential, and I think that's why a lot of media now, in the newsroom in Malacanang, a lot of websites that never used to deploy a reporter to Malacanang, they deploy like 3 reporters because, you know, it's such good copy. The hits are over the top. People are reading the news all the time because it's exciting to read the news nowadays. And even among my batchmates in school, a lot of millennials are more engaged in politics now because it's interesting, diba? It's like a
Politics
whole
beats
drama.
entertainment right now.
It's entertainment. So yeah, it's...
Another question from Twitter, and anyone on the panel can answer. This is from @endocrine witch. Iris is also using social media for medicine, right? For technology for medicine. What's the best defense against trolls? One, and then her second question is actually connected to you, Verhel. Both ethics and law lag behind technology. What to do? So, best defense against trolls and ethics. Go.
I think trolls feed on attention. And so the way to deal with a troll is not to give them the attention. They'll just wither and die. So for me, that's it.
Law and ethics necessarily would have to catch up with technology, and that's always the case. That will always be the case with technology. Technology will always overrun everything else. So we just try to catch up. How do we do it? I don't know. I don't have the answer, but I certainly think that it is important for us to do that. I don't know how to do it.
We'll take a question, the last question from the audience. There. So I see you raising your hand also.
Good
Go
afternoon.
ahead.
Yeah. My name is Michael, and I'm a software developer from Las Piñas.
Great.
Do you think that fanaticism is reinforced because of social media?
Yes.
Why? She said
Because
yes.
on social media, it's easier to feel one with a group of people because it's so easy to be united in one platform. Like even if you're from Saudi Arabia or you're from the States or from the Philippines, if you all support Duterte, for example, you can all rally around this page, this website, this Facebook group. So yeah, and then you can easily create campaigns like hashtags, right? Like Kathniel phenomenon. They're all driven by hashtags, and the hashtags, the number of posts you make, they all reinforce to people outside your cult that this cult is alive and well, it's kicking, and so people now are attracted to join it because it's so active. So yes, definitely, I really think social media does reinforce cults.
Yes. So the phenomenon of finding a community, I find it fascinating because one of the original best pieces of the internet was the ability to find a community. If you were a rice researcher in Tanzania, and you're the only rice researcher within 200 kilometers of where you are, you can now get on the internet and talk to the Erie in the Philippines rice researchers here and collaborate and become part of a community. Now I see a lot of, let's say, Indiegogo campaigns, raising money for a school somewhere that I've never heard of, and I'm like, wow, may ganyan pala, and I donate. So that's a form of engaging and building a community. So like pockets of behavior are encouraged by social media. I don't think it's inherently fanaticism, and I really don't think technology should be over-legislated because of the speed at which it moves, which we might disagree with.
Clinicians find that very natural, actually. Those who cannot be bold alone can be in company. It's a very natural tendency for one to gain boldness in company when one cannot be bold alone?
I think for those of you who remember, probably not very many, the days before the internet, if something went viral, that meant you had to go see a doctor. But nowadays, social media has such powerful reach and has the ability really to just create this phenomenon of fanaticism. It's good or bad. I mean, you could be a fanatic for a football team or something, that's okay. But sometimes it can really go the other way.
I'm going to bring in our two journalists, our anchors, who are actually both very active on social media. I believe Atom has more than 1 million followers on Twitter. Natasha had her own experiences on social media. Any questions for our panel? Or thoughts, insights from you guys?
Well, do you think the toxic environment right now is something that will take care of itself later on as people get, learn more about proper social media etiquette? Or is there something that responsible social media users should do actively to kind of maintain the balance between different groups in social media?
I see Vince and Stephanie, go.
For a lot of young internet users, the internet is like a new toy. You don't know what to do with it, and you do all crazy things with it. It's like a firecracker in a young boy's hand. I mean, even in my hands, firecrackers is fun to play with. But I think that's something that has to evolve, and I think hopefully it will evolve to a point where people will start being a little more responsible about using the internet, a little more responsible about what things they spread, and are more discerning about what is truth and what is not truth.
And norms change really fast too. 10 years ago, it was all, don't talk to strangers on the internet. Don't get into the car with strangers. And nowadays, you use the internet to call a stranger in a car to come pick you up and take you somewhere else. Yeah. So I think that the one thing is, no matter, don't block people who say things that you disagree with. Please, I think that's so important. Make a distinction between someone saying something that's, really there's something, some things are really terrible, like immoral, all right, or insulting you directly, you could maybe block that person, yes. But if someone's saying something you don't agree with, I don't think that's good enough reason to block someone, and I think that just reinforces this echo chamber. Ako, na-experience ko yan. Marami akong parang, oh my God, ang sinasabi mo, but I don't block these people because they are citizens just like I am, and we are all going to have to live in this country together for the next 50 years.
I have no doubt that education is the answer. I have no doubt. My problem is whether these people are teachable. I mean, they're simply people who are so full of their own dark causes that they have a tendency to resist instruction. This is my problem. That's why I'm just hoping that this is not a pathology, really. I'm hoping this is not a pathology, that this is something that can be somehow corrected, to an extent, in any case, by education.
I also think that if there's a cult for disinformation now, the people who believe in truth should also rally together, because now the people who are lying, they're so passionate about, spreading in disinformation or supporting this person or this idea. But those who stand their ground, who actively fight for truth on social media, should do it actively. Like, example, if you see some troll saying something really disgusting, really doesn't make any sense, there's no logic, it's just plain mean, and then you see someone reply with logic, with reason, like that. I mean, right? I mean, it's so simple. Sometimes if you see someone's comment with 50 likes versus someone with 8 likes, right? People tend to shut up when they see that they're not supported. So we should just keep supporting those who tell the truth. Like, Rappler social media team, they get bombarded by, evil comments every day. And most of the time, if you fight lies with truth, they'll shut up, promise. Like, if we have very cheeky replies that point out the comments falseness, and then people like the comment, and in the end, the Duterte, sorry, I keep referring to
Don't
them,
use-
but have a hugot, may hugot ako. Yeah, they just stop commenting, or sometimes they even delete their comment, or they even say apologize. So I think there's still hope for reason in the internet. We just have to fight for it.
I think the only comment I'm going to make, just because the examples have been the pro-Duterte followers, and my experience has also been from these very rabid pro-Duterte followers who have threatened me as well. I just want to make it clear that I don't think, and I feel the need to say it, it isn't so much about being pro-Duterte or anti-Duterte, because there are also very rabid, very rude, very nasty fans who are against Duterte, right? So let's just make it clear this is not, I'm very against the word Dutertard, because that in itself is an insult, and it's throwing it back at them. So I don't think this is a pro-Duterte, anti-Duterte thing. I think it's okay to disagree. What we're against are the personal attacks from whatever side, regardless of who you root for. And I just want to make that clear, right? Because I think if we sit here and talk about the Duterte followers or this and that, there's the exact same followers from the other side. And maybe if it's just the voices being drowned out, you know, it's becoming generalized. And I think when we generalize, it basically defeats the whole purpose of this conversation. So I think just a reminder that this is for everyone from every side, and the problem is more social media behavior, not so much who you're following.
Thank
Well
you.
said,
Please
partner.
join me in thanking our panelists, and we'll turn
Yes.
it back.
Thank you so much once again, Server Hell, Pia, Stephanie, and Vince for joining us this afternoon. And thank you, Maria, for moderating that panel discussion. Whew. This is something we'll be talking about for many, many more sessions. So it's a good start. And tama nga yung sinabi mo, Natasha, it's not really about one particular side. It's about how we should deal with each other with respect, regardless if we are on the opposite side of the fence. And that applies in real life. It also applies in social media.
Absolutely. So I wish we could eliminate words like yellow tard, Dutertard. I mean, these in itself is, you know, they're attacks and they're just so commonplace now. But if you think about the actual root of it, it's actually, you know, rooted in hate. So I think we should start by maybe stop using these words regardless of what side we're in.
Ba, may mga pumapalapak. Thank you.